guys can keep talking, and it's all right. We haven't started yet. Oh, all right, hey guys, welcome to the fundraising workshop we have, guys. I am so excited for us to be gathered here in person and live. It's going to be an amazing afternoon. Hey, real quick, my name is Sam. I am one of the Fall DTS school leaders. Shout out to my crew that's coming here in the fall. We excited. We cannot wait to see you guys. Hey, and the reason we're hosting this is YWAM Orlando. We exist because 2.2 billion people will live and die without ever hearing the name of Jesus, unless someone goes. And right now we're looking at a generation, Gen Z, is set up to be the generation that could respond the greatest to this need, right? 53% of Gen Z Christians would say yes to missions as a career. That is significant. We are in a significant time in history. But what is stopping people from going to the nations? One of the most prominent things is finances. So we put together this workshop so that if the Lord is calling you to the nations, if he's calling you to staff overseas, if he's calling you to your church, or even to start your own ministry, we have this workshop set up that you would have the tools and be equipped, that finances would not be the reason you say no to God. But because you have the tools, the strategies, and wisdom, you can say, God, I got it. Let's go. I'm going to follow you to the ends of the earth. So we're so excited and happy for you guys to be with us. And who I have here with me, I have Michael Berg, who is our founder, and he's been in ministry, or this ministry has been set up for 30 years. So 30 years of ministry experience. And we also have Sam Blommel with us. He's been on staff with us for 10 years, and it's amazing. They both are currently raising families through missions, and so it's possible. Michael Berg has put his kids, right? Him and his wife have put kids through college, right? So finances isn't a challenge. Sometimes it can be hard, but with the right tools and the right wisdom and strategies, you can be fully funded and chase after the things that the Lord has put on your heart. So it's going to be such a great time. I know one of the things, you probably have questions. So what we want you to do, our friends in person, you already know, scan that QR code, type in your questions. Those of you guys that are on live stream through YouTube, please, in the comment section, write out your questions, send it, and then there will be a time where we will have for you guys that we will respond to the questions. So, and make sure to stick around for the entire workshop, because at the end we have a couple things we want to give to you guys, a couple gifts from us, a little bit, to make sure that you leave this workshop with confidence that, hey, I can step into fundraising and I can see my support actually come through, right? And for those of you guys that are coming through the fall, we want you guys to be able to show up and say, yes, I took something from this workshop, and I'm here because I was obedient, I took risks, I stepped out in faith, and God met me in my steps every way. So cool, super excited. Now, I want to introduce our first speaker. Like I said, Michael Berg, our founder of our movement here, YWAM Orlando. Super excited just to hear, like I said, 30 years of ministry experience in missions, right? So it is possible. It's so possible, guys. So without further ado, I'll introduce you, Michael.
All right, good.
Yeah.
Hey, hi everybody. It's good to be with you. This is an area where I was sitting in your seat, whether you're getting ready to come to a DTS or you're new on staff or wanting to apply for staff. I've been there in my journey, and I just want to share a bit of the story and maybe some of the things we discovered along the way. Hudson Taylor, a famous missionary to China, has this famous quote, God's work done in God's way will never lack God's supply. And do you believe that? A lot of us hear a quote like that and we think, yeah, that worked for him, but what about me? Well, God's the same, and he's no respecter of persons, and God shows up in a powerful way. When I came to my discipleship training school, I was trusting God for the money for the school, but I also had to trust him for my laundry money. I mean, people now, because I've been at it for so many years, and we're seeing God provide for this campus in an amazing way. It didn't start with that. It started with trusting God for a few dollars to do my laundry, or to pay for my outreach, or those kind of things. And so we've all been there, and God has proven himself faithful. Well, I get through my training. I've seen God do miraculous things to provide for my training, and then I became the part of the pioneering team in Miami. And I remember at that time in YWAM, I'm old enough to be in YWAM before we ever had any teaching on support raising. We had, basically, initially we were told to ask nobody but God, only ask God. And then about 81, we were actually challenged by the Lord to begin to share our need to inspire others to be involved in missions. But nobody was teaching it, so I didn't have instructions. We had between $300 and $400 a monthly support, my wife and I. And it varied because one guy committed $100 a month, but he was very forgetful. So he had plenty of money, but he was not organized. And so, it would go, it would ebb and flow. And that's 25% of our income. But I look back at that and I go, I have no idea how we paid the bills. I have no idea how we paid the bills. Because those, the rent, the utilities, the food, it was more than that. But God made it work somehow. That's not how we were supposed to live, though. And so I began to learn about support raising. I did Bible study. I learned from other organizations. I read some books. And, it wasn't my favorite thing, but I started getting going. I remember in Miami, we had this car that had no AC. And Miami's hot. And I remember having a meeting with the pastor, and I had to go there. I set the appointment with his pastor early in the morning so I could get there before it got too hot. And so I drove there. I got there a half hour early. I was dripping wet with sweat. I went into the bathroom a half hour early, and I got all dried off and got myself prepared, and then made my presentation. And that's how it started, just trusting God. So you and I both have obstacles. And we can say that we can let the obstacles define us, or the obstacles actually say no for us, or we can trust God, the creator of the universe, to give us a way around the obstacles to see his provision come through. Some of the things I learned along the way, one was that God is faithful. I saw God be faithful all the time. I also had to come to the conclusion that God will not forsake me. You hear the great stories, but do you believe God won't forsake you? Do you believe God is faithful to you? That's really, really critical. Another one is I really wrestled with knowing whether or not making your needs known was biblical. People would often challenge you, why don't you do it like Paul did and make tents? And the reality is, as you look in Scripture, there were times that he made tents, but there are other times he was living fully on support, and he affirmed that. And you see, I won't go through the passages because we're trying to keep this brief, but if you look at Romans 15, verses 23 and 24, Paul says to the Roman church, I'm going to come by, and on my way to Spain, I'm going to come and spend time with you. And in that culture, that meant you're going to take care of me while I'm there. And then he says to them, I want you to support me or help me get to Spain. In other words, I want you to fund my journey to Spain. And so it was very overt in that culture. In 2 Corinthians 9, first 5 verses, he says to the Corinthian church, I'm going to send some brothers ahead to make sure that the gift you promised is there when I get there, so that I'm not embarrassed and you're not embarrassed. That sounds almost a little bit like the mafia, you know what I mean? I'm going to send Uncle Louie, and he's going to come make sure you have that gift when I get there. So when people say do it like Paul, they never quote those verses. They quote the one tent-making verse, So the idea is we need to trust God to show us how he wants us to do it and moving forward. It's also part of how God is called YWAM. God called YWAM to have a relationship-based support. There are other organizations where you go and you get a salary, and it may be small, and the reality is many of your friends probably think you get some form of a salary. You get some kind of spending money or something, and are quite surprised when they discover you don't. And so, but this is part of how God has wired us as YWAM. I get my support as the founding director here the same way the newest staff member does. I don't get 1 penny of the tuition dollars. I don't get 1 penny from any dollars raised to build buildings. None of that comes to me. I get my support exactly like you do. And so God is faithful. And Lauren Cunningham, who passed away last October, the founder of our mission, got his money the exact same way. So there's not a different way for people in senior leadership as opposed to the newest recruit. Because it's tied to our values. It's who we are. It's how we function. And so that value says this, that we practice dependence on God in YWAM. We're called to practice a life of dependence upon God for financial provision. For individuals and for a YWAM team or community, this comes primarily through who? His people, primarily. As God has been generous toward us, so we desire to be generous, giving ourselves, our time, our talents to God, and with no expectation of remuneration. In other words, we don't expect somebody to pay us. We willingly serve. Okay, and so I found it's just part of how God's called us. And if you're part of this mission, that's part of how God's called you. You know, and I've had people say, well, I don't think I'm supposed to ask anybody. I said, well, maybe you're not supposed to be part of this mission. I mean, it's one of two things. Either you're a part of this mission and God's going to do something supernatural and you're going to have all the money you need, and we'll know real soon if that happened, or this is the wrong mission for you, because that's how God's called us. And what I found is God has used this whole journey to teach me how to communicate better, how to evangelize better, how to share vision more effectively. And I learned most of that through this whole area of developing a partnership team, a support raising team. And you got to start with knowing your why. You got to know why do you need money? Why do you need somebody to partner with you? So what? It's not because you have a bill to pay. That's not a big enough why. The why is much bigger than that. Sam talked about our why here at YWAM Orlando. Our why is that there are billions of people that are living and dying without ever hearing the name of Jesus, and God has called us to go to the nations. And so that's the why. So stand with me in partnership, please, so we together can see those people won for Christ through training a generation and sending them to the nations. So you know your why. And then pray. Why pray? Because we have one source. Our one source is God. Our temptation is to look at people and you go, why are you not providing for me? Why are you not giving? And some of the people that you think ought to give to you, they have plenty of money, they're relationally connected, they don't. And then somebody else just surprises you with their generosity. Well, the key is to not look at people as your source, but to look at God as your source. I found personally, when I started looking at people as my source, I found myself getting frustrated with them, disappointed. I remember that one guy that was giving us $100 a month, and when he remembered, I found myself becoming resentful toward him. And as I was praying about it and, kind of challenging, asking God to challenge him, God actually told me something that surprised me. God told me to release him from supporting me, because the relationship with him was more important than his $100. And so he wasn't my source. I began to look at him as my source, and that's not true. I had a wrong mindset. And God wanted to shift my mindset so I would look to him as my source. And this is absolutely critical for that. And then the other thing that people would maybe say to me is like, why don't you get a real job? I'm thinking, I don't know how it gets more real. I work more than a full-time schedule, and then I trust God for my salary and my ministry expenses, and I have to spend extra time for doing that. And I'm laying my life down that people might know Jesus. I go around the world. I sleep in places that are not comfortable. I eat food that's probably not all that safe, so that I might share the gospel and teach people. Tell me how it gets more real. And over the years, although as people have seen God's faithfulness to Darla and I in our lives, they have come back later and said things like this: maybe we should have faith like you do. And God shows up. I never dreamed that when I started this, I would be a long-term missionary. But I can just tell you for sure, God is absolutely faithful. He has cared for us year after year after year. We've had everything we've needed and more. Not always, some things we wanted, but everything we've needed plus more. And we've been able to be generous, and God's been faithful. The other thing that I really had to deal with was just kind of feeling like a beggar. When you go out and you're raising support, you kind of feel like a beggar. You're sitting on the street corner and you got your cup out there and you're going alms for the poor, That's a wrong mindset. That's not what we're doing. We are not after pity money. That's not what we're doing. We're after passion commitment, passion money. It's about passion for the lost, passion to train a generation. And so what we're doing is we're saying to those who want to partner with us, would you join me as we together train this generation, as we together go into the nations? And it's an opportunity. We're giving them an opportunity. And I remember thinking, I don't want to put pressure on people, and I still don't want to put pressure on people. But giving somebody an opportunity isn't putting pressure on people. It's just giving them an opportunity. It's just like this. If I had free set of Disney tickets, now you might be boycotting Disney, I don't know, but let's say I had a free pair of Disney tickets and I offered them to you. So I say, would you like this free pair of Disney tickets? And you go, no, I'm boycotting Disney. Okay, no problem. Should I be offended? Should I feel rejected? No. What did they say no to? The Disney tickets. They weren't rejecting me. They were saying no to the opportunity. The same thing is true with your support. So I go to somebody else and I say, hey, would you like this pair of free Disney tickets? I go, oh yeah, that'd be great. Okay, there you go. So what I find is our job is to go out and share the vision, share the why, share the opportunity with enough people, and God will use that to connect us to the ones that are supposed to be our partners, part of our team. And I found over the years, many times when I've gone out and talked to somebody who said no to me, it sometimes is a memory jogger for them because they said yes to somebody else and they weren't being faithful. And so they go, oh yeah, I was supposed to support Jen. I better send her that check, or whoever. And it's just an interesting thing. Or some of those times, those folks will come back a year or two later and say, you know what, we were supporting some people. They've come off the field. We want to now support you. And so what I've found, I've met amazing people over the years who've been just faithful to support, okay? And for decades, people have stood with us for decades. And remember, I just wanted to reiterate, we have to remember God's our source. We always want to do what's the best and highest for the people we're talking to. Never want to hurt somebody, never want to put pressure on them, never manipulate, never put a guilt trip on somebody. It's an open-handed, free opportunity they can say yes to or no to. I'm clear, but no, I'm not pushy. And so because at the end of the day, I want to keep that relationship secure whether or not they say yes. Okay? So we want to move from fear to faith. So this move from this fear to courageous faith. I found some of the obstacles that I personally dealt with. One was fear of rejection. And I kind of dealt with that a bit ago when I was saying it's an opportunity. But also, I just didn't kind of have a sense that God would provide 100% for me. And so when you go out and trust God for the support, whether it's for DTS and you're trusting God for the whole of your tuition, the whole of your outreach fee, do you believe God's going to provide? Faith is kind of an expectation, isn't it? It's like I'm expecting God to show up and do something extraordinary and provide. And if you're joining staff and you set up a budget, do you believe God will provide that for you, or do you think you just get enough to get by? I want to challenge us to believe God for 100% of what He's shown us. One of the best ways is to pray and ask God, what is it you need, so that your budget or your need is defined and it's clear, and you and God have kind of you've confirmed that with Him, and maybe with some leaders who've gone before you, so that you're confident that what you're asking for is reasonable. And then I think we can believe God for it. And we got to shift from faith from fear to faith, courageous action. There's There was a time, I'll tell you some stories along the way, but there was a time that I was calling some guys in Miami because like I said, we just had hardly any support, and I was supporting a wife, and I called this one guy that I had met at a concert, and we were at this VIP deal. I set up the YWAM booth, and he was just a business guy that was part of that and a sponsor. And I called him and I said, hey, so-and-so, do you explained who I was, love to get together, love to share our vision with you and give you an opportunity to partner with us if you'd like. He said, that's fine, go, you can come, but I want you to know I've already made all my commitments I'm going to make for this year in supporting people. And I said, well, that's okay, I'd still love to come and share. And so I had been meeting with lots of different people, and I forgot to write down that he said he couldn't support me. Bad mistake. So I'm sitting in his office. It's a big, massive office, and we're sitting there talking in his living room section of his office. He had a desk area, and he had a living room area, and we're sitting there, and I'm talking to him about the mission, and I got all done, and I asked him for $200 a monthly support. And he goes, now you remember I told you I've already made all my commitments, I can do this. I said, oh yes, I'm so sorry, please forgive me, I forgot all about that. He said, no, but as you've been sharing, I've been moved, and I do want to do something. I said, oh, no, please don't do it. And he said, no, I want to do this. And he gets up, and he goes to his desk, and he writes a check, not a monthly commitment, but a special gift. And he brings back the check, and I look at it, and I think, oh, it's $200, really nice. And then I realize, oh, that looked a little odd. I looked at it again, and I realized I missed a zero. He wrote a check for $2,000, and this came from a guy who told me he's already given all he's going to give this year. And I believe he was telling the truth as he saw it at the time, but his heart was moved by story of where God was at work and what God was up to, and he stretched and gave more than what he had planned to because God touched his heart. You just never know. Now, my point is, I've never done this perfectly. I've made mistakes along the way. Just take responsibility for those, and it doesn't have to be a big deal. You and I are human. We're gonna make mistakes. Just own them and keep moving forward. Okay. So God's been faithful. The other thing I would say is start with close relationships. When you go to people, sometimes we like to go to somebody we don't really know because it feels a little less risky maybe. But no, just start with the people closest to you because they're the most committed to you. And maybe your starting presentation with somebody or your invitation can be just, hey, I've got to go out and talk to folks. Can I practice with you? Can you give me some feedback? And then the other thing I found over the years was go person to person. I don't know about you, but I would rather do it a low risk way. I want to just text somebody or send them a little email, or that's not very effective. I want to just put some flyers out there on people's car wipers, in the grocery store parking lot, and hope that my support comes out. Whatever, we want to do something that I don't have to sit with somebody face to face and have a conversation. But the more personal, the better. One of the reasons is it protects relationships. If I'm meeting with Jimmy there and we're having a conversation, I'm reading his body language, he's reading my body language. I can see if he's got a question that's comes across his face. I can go, hey, I noticed maybe you have a question. I can pause, we can interact. If I'm just doing a text or a flat email, it just doesn't have the same kind of warmth and connection. And again, I believe God wants us to protect relationships as we go forward. So I've seen God move. I've seen God move in power. I've seen him move just in faithfulness to us. And now these days, I'm trusting God for millions of dollars. And he's doing it. Principles are the same. I could not walk into the role that I carry today had I not started trusting God for my laundry money, trusting God for my outreach, trusting God for my school, trusting God for a few $100s a monthly support, and learning how to share. And what God will do for you and me in these times will stretch our capacity. He'll grow us up. And I am confident that you are workmen worthy of your wage. And I believe God promises if he's called you that he will provide, and we can trust him for that. So I'm hoping just that you'll realize that this journey is worth taking, and you're not taking it alone. The creator of the universe is walking with you. He'll lead you. Ask him who you should talk to, and ask him what you should say. Sam is going to be giving you a lot of practical tips along the way, but I just wanted you to realize, that you and I start in the same place, and God is no respecter of persons, and he'll do for you what he's done for me and many others as well. Thank you. Sam?
That was so good, guys. Oh, I love that. I think just to highlight something that Michael shared of remembering that God is our source, right? And I think it's so easy, especially when it comes to crunch time, right? It's like, okay, I have this looming deadline, right? For some of you guys, I'll use Fall DTS as a reference, it's like, okay, September 29th is arrival day, and it's almost September, and it's like, okay, but what can God do in this time when we look at him as our source, right? You've been texting people, oh man, maybe it's time for me to start. Okay, Lord, who is a person I can meet with? Just, Lord, today, who's one person I can see face to face? Things like that. I really love that challenge. I think that's so good. And I know Sam's going to give us a lot of practical tools as well.
Can I jump in? I'm going to jump in on that. In between my first school, the discipleship training school, and my second school, I had 2 weeks and I had no money. And so when I went home, and especially you guys coming to DTS, you may want to consider this. When I went home, I sold everything that wasn't attached. I had 2 guitars. I sold my 12-string. I just started selling stuff, and then I was praying, and I was also sharing. And what happened is, as I began to do the possible, I saw God do the impossible. My dad at that time wasn't walking with the Lord, and he sold his silver coin collection in the time when the silver market went way up. I had no idea about the silver market, but he gave me a bunch of money. He wasn't walking with the Lord, but he was impressed with what God was doing. Somebody else paid for my other guitar, but said, "Now I'm loaning it to you, so you don't sell it." And so it was just story after story after God's provision. I came with all the money to cover my minimum payments on a debt I had. I had my full lecture phase and my outreach all in 2 weeks. But it started with me doing the possible and then watching God do the impossible. And so it's crazy. So September 29th is more than 2 weeks. And I really believe God can meet you if you'll start to act and do what's possible and trust him to do the impossible.
Yes, so good. I think we have a couple questions. I think we can take one from the room.
Hey guys, so I was wondering, what's one story in your life that's been the most toughest in raising money for a new season?
I missed a little bit of that. It's been the most what?
So a story that's been right before a new season, what was a tough story in encountering trying to get the finances in order for this new season before it starts?
Yeah. Just trying to think of one. You got one off the top of your head?
I got one. So after I finished discipleship training school, I went to YWAM Nashville, and I did school with them. And I met with many people that I had known. Asked what I felt like every person I knew who to ask to help with my outreach. So I needed to raise money for the school outreach, and it was right around Christmas time. So I had been back home for the Christmas week. And actually, at that point in my life, I raised $1,500 in a week, which is just blew my mind. I was like, "Oh God, you're so faithful," but I still needed another $1,500. And so, actually, in YWAM Nashville, they kind of have forested area. So I just went out into the woods. I was just like, "Okay, Lord, I have 2 days left. We're gonna go on outreach, and I need you to come through. I need $1,500, and I felt like I'd done everything I could at that point. And so anyway, you're gonna learn a little bit about me right now that I'm a bit of a nerd. So I'm talking to the Lord, and I look down, and there's a nickel on the ground, and I picked it up. And if you know anything about coins in the United States, they have a letter on them, and the letter shows you where that coin was made. And I believe there's 4 places in the United States where coins are minted. Well, that one said that coin was from Denver, and that's where I had just come from. I had done DTS in Denver, and just that little small letter on a silly little coin, and just the Lord spoke to me right there in that moment, like, I was faithful for you in Denver, and I'll be faithful for you now.
So good.
And I just felt really refreshed by that. Still scared. Still didn't know what was going to happen in 2 days. So then I just walked back to the dorms. My school leader came, talked to me, and he said, "You're never going to believe it. Somebody just sent an anonymous gift to the base and said, give it to whoever needs it. It's for $1,500. We're going to give it to you."
Wow.
So really, you just have to, you press into the Lord. You just ask the Lord, "Lord, I've done what I can, and what can you do?" And I'm just trusting you. And his voice and his leading, he'll get you there. Yeah.
You have time for another one? Yeah. So I was in a transition period, and I had there was an optometrist in my hometown area that was supporting Darla and I, and he was just dropping us. He just dropped our support. So I was having a meeting with him and just trying, we were sitting at an outside table outside of Taco Bell there in St. Joe, and I was having a conversation with him, and I was, trying to mask my disappointment a bit because, we needed that, support. But again, God's our source, not him, and, I just was being releasing. And just as we were sitting there, a friend of his, who was an ophthalmologist, an eye surgeon, walked up. And he goes, "Oh, you should meet my friend." And he introduces me to him, and we told him who I was and who I worked with. And he goes, "Oh, YWAM, I know YWAM. Give me a call, and love to talk to you about what you're doing." And then he walked away. What would you do with that? Most of us would go, "Well, I don't. He probably really didn't mean that," but I gave him a call, and we had a meeting together, and he supported us for probably 30 years. If not more, and hundreds of it was I can't remember now. Initially, I think it was north of $200 a month, and now it's a little bit less. But they've been supporting us for decades, all because I did an impromptu meeting at a Taco Bell. I didn't know him before, and we've spent time in their home since then. But it's just an amazing thing, and just being faithful to be to do what God's asked you to do, and move on what's in front of you. So.
We have one more question, and I think it's important because I think it's going to really set up the rest of the workshop. And it's, how did you find your why, and how did you stay committed to it? So a little two-part question there. How did you find your why?
Okay.
And how did you stay committed to it?
Okay. How did I find the why? Initially, I really wasn't talking about a why. I was just talking about a what. What do I need? And what am I doing? And I realized just through some reading, through some godly men who I was talking with that were challenging me that you've got to start with what's behind that. What you're doing is a good thing, but it's not strong enough to motivate people to want to partner with you. So what is it you're trying to accomplish? The why is, what's your objective? What are you trying to accomplish? A lot of people say, "Well, my vision is to work in DTS." So I said, "Well, that's not really a vision. DTS is a tool. It's a training tool. So who are you training? Why are you doing this? What's behind that?" And just I was being pushed by godly men that I was spending time with questions, kind of pushing me until I could come to the why. And then I was taking that to the Lord as well. So it was a bit of a process as I continued to clarify the reason why, and I'm solid on it now, and that's more compelling. And so for me, it's my life call, and so it's not really something I think about sticking to. It's because it's not this slogan that I've come up with to try to get some support. It's actually what I'm called to do, and so I don't. I haven't had to try to stick to it. I just had to discover it, and once it was clear, I've held on to it. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's good. So we're going to jump to a little commercial break here. I want to remind you guys, please share your questions that you have, either through the QR code, you guys here in person, or if you guys are on the live stream, you guys can go ahead and comment, and we have one of our team members who will go ahead and send that question up to us, and we'll try to get your questions answered as well. So I want to introduce our next speaker. So we got a lot of vision here for fundraising, and so now how do we make it practical, right? And I love Sam Blommel. Sam Blommel is a man who can take the big visionary stuff and make it practical and really easy for it. Okay, this is how you do it. This is how you run with it. I really love when he shares. I've been in a couple of his support raising meetings, like groups that he's like helped young staff, us new staff, right, get our support together. It has been so amazing. He's such a blessing to our community. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to you, Sam Blommel.
Great, thank you. I appreciate that. What I'm going to share about in the next few minutes is, again, just like really practical, and that's my strength. And so this first little section here, we're going to talk about how do you set up a meeting? How do you actually connect with somebody so that you can share with them what you're doing? And I'm going to kind of laser focus in on fundraising for DTS. So the principles, Michael said this earlier, he's raising millions of dollars for something bigger than what I'm doing, but a lot of the principles still apply. So as you're starting DTS, it's about sharing vision, sharing stories, connecting with a person relationally. So how do you do that well, and what are some tools that can help you be successful in your path to doing that? This is first few minutes. I'm going to talk about creating a name list, and then when you contact people, are you prepared to connect with them and communicate with them in a clear way? Do you have a script? Do you have an outline? And even as you practice and get prepped for that, you might run into somebody at the store or at Taco Bell, and you want to be ready to connect with them and set something up so you can continue meeting with them in the future or to meet with them in the first time. Excuse me. And so in setting up a meeting, you always want to start with the people you know. So Michael's mentioned that briefly already. But people that know you, so I've been in YWAM a long time, and I have asked people that partner with me, why do you give to me? And I'm like, well, it's because I'm like really cool and good looking, and no, that's not why. But the number one answer they give me is, well, we know you and we trust you. So people that know you are the most likely that they're going to easily give to you versus like calling up a stranger, which you may have to do in the future, but you want to first start with the people that you know. They're just going to be the most effective in reaching. So you want to get yourself a name list, okay? And I think everybody has one. And you'll notice this is an example one. My name's on there first, so you now know me. So you're going to make a name list of everybody that you know, and you're just going to put it on a piece of paper or on an Excel sheet or however you want to organize that. And you're not going to skip out on any name, and that will feel scary. So I'm just going to tell you, you're not asking them to marry you, right? You're just putting a name on a list. And so as you're getting ready, preparing for DTS, you're like, you need to raise a little over $8,000 to cover lecture phase and outreach phase. You need a bunch of people to help you do that. If you maybe, some people work, and you probably will be working as you are getting ready for DTS, but you're going to need more than just what you can do on your own. So you want to, how can I get a bunch of people I know involved in this? And not everyone's going to say yes either. So you want to give yourself a good amount of resources to work with, right? And again, people aren't resources like money, like we don't just mistreat them, but we want to steward them well, and connect with them in a human way. So you have this name list, okay? And you just write down every person you know, and you're going to categorize them in, I like to do ABC. So a category A would be a person that if I would call them or contact them or see them, they're very likely to say yes to meet with me, and I can share with them about what I'm doing for DTS. A B category would be somebody I'm pretty comfortable with, but I maybe don't know if they will want to meet with me or be interested in what I have to say. And then a C list would be somebody's like pretty unlikely that they would meet with me, but I actually don't know. It's possible, they would, right? But you know them on some level. So, I just gave you an example list here, and so to be funny, I put my name and Michael's name. So Michael might fire me now. But, and then, of course, Jesus is on there too. You're going to ask him for everything. So you're going to have a name list of all the people, and you're going to start connecting with the people that are in category A, right? So again, this is like super practical. This is just how my brain works. I'm not trying to be like impersonal, but I have my list of people. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna connect with people in that area, in that category first. And when I'm contacting people, I want to call them. It's also good you could ask them face to face, like, hey, could we meet sometime? But calling is really effective, I think, for two reasons. Actually, in this day and age, it's uncommon for people to actually call each other who know each other. So I've actually been doing fundraising recently, and I've been calling some people I know. And it's interesting thing that's been happening is I've had several people, like I call people and I don't always leave a message. So then my friend calls me back and like, hey, you called. I thought it was important because you don't normally call me. Like it's unusual to get a call from a person I know, right? So it has helped me a little bit. Like I don't have to hunt people down as much because it's unusual, it's uncommon for somebody to get a personal call from, a friend. And then you also want to call versus like, sending a text or a social media message or, something that is impersonal because you want them to hear the tone in your voice. And you want to hear that, have that human connection and interaction with them and hear that, you care about them. Your friends, your acquaintances, like I'm not just trying to get money out of you. You actually can hear the tone and the passion about of what I have to say. Does that make sense? So, you want to have a plan when you're asking somebody for a meeting. So you're going to call them up, and you're going to call through your list of Category A people and Category B, and you want to be prepared. So how I kind of think about this when I'm getting ready to call somebody is I have a little outline, and I'm being prepared so I can, so I've written here on the notes. So for those of you watching online, there's some notes attached or being sent to you, and all this stuff's written down for you. But preparation prevents poor performance. It just helps you be ready, and you're just gonna be a little more effective. Doesn't mean you're not gonna be making mistakes, like Michael said earlier, but it just helps you be more successful. So you have an outline. You're gonna, start with. You call somebody, they answer the phone, and you're going to be a regular human being, but you'll feel really scared. Like I've called people like, hi, grandma. Like, it's like you just, your hands shake and you're just a little scared. Some people are a little bit better than me, but So you're going to be normal. You're going to ask them how they are, and you're just going to connect with them on a human level, on your friendship level, your acquaintance level, and then you're going to ask them for a meeting, and I've shared just a general script with you of how you could phrase that, and you can adjust that to yourself, make it sound how you would sound, and then when you call somebody, you can ask them for a meeting and share about DTS. Like, hey, I'm going to do this thing called DTS. I want to move into what God's calling me to do, and I'd love to sit down face to face with you and talk about that and share that with you. So I'm going to try something here. I'm going to actually try to schedule a meeting with somebody right in front of you, if that's possible. So to be fair, the person I'm about to call does know I'm calling them. So just not totally out of the blue. Right. So here we go. Hey, man, how are you?
Good, thanks. How you doing?
Hey, it's Sam. I am currently in front of a bunch of people, and you're being live streamed on the internet.
Nice.
Do you consent to your voice being used?
Let's see how the conversation goes, and then I'll respond.
Oh, okay, good. All right. Hey, man, I just want for those of you in the audience, this is Justin. Hey, man, I was just connecting with you. I don't know if you've, heard about what I'm trying to do next, but I'm trying to get to DTS in a couple weeks.
Okay.
And I just would really love to, get together with you and share about that. And I need to build a prayer and support team. I would love to see if you'd be interested in being added to that, and just share with you, the vision of what I'm doing, but also my financial needs and goals that I have for that. Could possibly next week, sometime like Thursday, work to get coffee with you?
Yeah, what DTS is like a missions thing or something?
Yeah, so I don't know if you're familiar with YWAM or Youth with a Mission, but it's this 5-month program. I'll be in Orlando doing it, and I just, I really feel like the Lord's moving. Like, this is the next best thing for me to be doing with my, in this season of my life. And just excited to see what the Lord does with that, and how I can get trained to do missions and do some overseas things.
Okay. Yeah, cool. That sounds really exciting. Let me take a look at my schedule, and can I get back to you like in a day or two and let you know?
Yeah, could you just text me back, and we'll figure it out over text?
Yeah, for sure.
Cool.
But I think Thursday's probably going to work, so
Awesome.
I'll let you know.
Great, and I'll take you for coffee. Don't worry about it.
Oh, cool. I like coffee.
Nice. Awesome. Thanks, man.
Yeah, dude. See you later.
Bye. Yeah. So, you do this a couple, dozen times, it starts to get a little bit easier. I still, sometimes I'm calling somebody that's like a C category on my name list, or even sometimes a B. I'm not super familiar with them, and I still get the shakes a little bit, and I don't say all the right words. That's okay. It's just being bold to make the ask, and you can do it. And I'm so surprised sometimes that people say yes to what I've asked of them. So, so again, you can, adjust this script to something that works for you. And I don't care what words you say, as you're asking people for a meeting, as long as it's truthful and you want to be clear. And I do advise people, you want to mention, something about finances. And you don't have to make the whole conversation about finances in asking for a meeting. But you also don't want to show up to a meeting and you're like, oh, I didn't say anything. And then you're going to ask them to partner with you. And then they feel like it's a bait and switch. Right? Oh, I thought we were just getting coffee. You want to make sure you're clear about that. Just to help keep that relationship clear and clean. And not feeling like you're tricking people. Yeah. So, we move on to asking some questions. Yeah.
Yes. So the first question we have here is, how do you know when to ask for monthly support or a one-time donation?
I would always default, unless the Lord has told you to do otherwise, to the monthly support. Because if you get the monthly support, it'll be a lot more over the years and decades that roll forward. And if you're a full-time missionary, then you want to do the monthly. Now, if you're in raising your funds for DTS, then a special gift, accumulated. So if you got $8,000 that you're raising, let's say the average person is likely to give $300. You need about 26-ish gifts of special gifts to get you to the DTS, and so then it makes sense, because it's not you're not needing the support year round. You just need it for an event. Then special gift, one-time gift makes sense. Yeah.
One more, and then we're going to jump into another session with you here. How do I ask for support when most of my friends aren't believers and I don't have a lot of solid relationships?
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons why a name list is important. So as long as you are faithful to use that tool, in my life I found that the Lord reminds me that I actually know a lot more people than I realized. And I've been doing this now for 15, 16 years in full-time missions. And just last week, the Lord gave me 3 names. He's like, you haven't ever asked these people, and you know them. And it's like, you're right. I just totally forgot that I have relationship with them. And so, obviously, fundraising for DTS in a couple weeks, that's a little bit more challenging. But I've also found, too, like sometimes the Lord's asked me to be bold and ask people that don't know Jesus if they'll support me in doing missions. I have a lot of friends who don't know the Lord, but they've given me money because they know I'm trying to, improve the world, make the world a better place. I do practical things for people. I'm mentoring young people, and people want to get behind that because people are generous, and they want to be a part of good things that are happening in the world.
I had a guy that didn't know the Lord. He was a bartender, and my parents knew him, and he wanted to get our information. So I started sending him my updates, my regular updates, and they started supporting us. And at that time, I was only sending an update about every 3 months. And so whenever he'd get an update, he'd get inspired. He'd go to church that week, And then when they had marriage troubles, they started reaching out to me thousands of miles away for marriage counseling, which was pretty bizarre. But I was the only God person that he was connecting with. So sometimes you might be the only Jesus with skin on that somebody's seeing because you gave them an opportunity to participate with you. I wouldn't hide who I am or what I'm doing, but they can participate. That name list, by the way, when you're putting people on a list, you're not qualifying. You're not going trying to decide, well, I don't know if I want to ask them for support or not. That's not the question. The question is, who do I know? You're just getting a list of people there, and you may never ask some of them because God may not lead you to. But you just kind of get it out of your head on paper so you know all the people you know. And like Sam says, you'll be surprised at how many people you know.
So good. Thank you, guys. So Sam is doing the second session here. He's going to jump into how do we share face-to-face.
Yeah, so meeting face-to-face with people is the most effective way that you can share vision and share about what's happening with you. So I don't remember where I heard this from, but this is probably about 10 years old, this information. But an organization did, just some data collection on how effective is face-to-face meeting, and asking for support from somebody versus, blast emails or letters or things like that. And face-to-face by far, like sitting down with a person and presenting your need or your ask, was 50% of the time the person said yes to whatever you asked of them. Versus if you just sent like a support-raising newsletter and just sent it in the mail and somebody read it, that's 2% effective. That's very low. So, I've spent a lot of time in my missions life just sending out letters and hoping somebody reads it and pops a check in the mail, and it's not very effective. I don't have a lot of return on that, and you waste a lot of time doing that. So I've learned over the years it's better to try to connect with a person, see if I can sit down with them for 20, 30 minutes, just share effectively, and it's amazing. Sometimes people are like, yeah, I'll do that, and I'll give you more. I just want to kind of walk you through, if you're sitting down with somebody, how can you share with them? And then one of the things that we've worked on creating that will help you is a template. And it's on Canva, and you can customize this to work for you. So this specifically is worded for DTS. So, those of you who are trying to get here in a couple of weeks, or, in a future DTS, this is specifically worded for I'm raising money for DTS, but you can adjust this. You can make it work for you. So I'm actually going to put Talon on the spot here, and if Talon could come up, and Michael's going to move. Not because I don't appreciate you. I'm just going to kind of walk you through of like, hey, I'm asking Talon to help partner with me to get me to DTS. Okay? Yeah. Oh, sent it to you. Nice. All right. So, I'm just going to walk this. I'm going to go through this, and then we'll talk through some of the details when I'm done. How are you, Talon? Good. Maybe.
Hello, I'm great.
You can maybe use this. You don't. It's not a big speaking role. I'm sorry. Right. So you're gonna meet with somebody at Starbucks or wherever, have lunch with them, and this is a tool that you have with you. This is just to help you stay on track, and actually visuals help people. The words I'm saying you may not always understand, but the visual maybe will help you understand, right? So, I'd sit with the table with him, and I'm gonna start out with sharing my testimony. So you know me, but some things you may not know about me. My name is Samuel. That's my full name. And I'm named after Samuel in the Bible. Are you familiar with Samuel and Hannah in the Bible?
Yeah.
That story. So Hannah, can't have kids, and so she goes to the temple and asking the Lord for a son. So the same thing was true for my parents. My mom couldn't have kids, and so she asked the Lord for me, and I'm literally an answer to my mom's prayer. It's pretty cool. And unfortunately for me, I didn't always recognize that, especially when you're like 8 or 10 years old, right? But and another cool thing about just that story of me, being an answer to prayer for my mom is that she dedicated me to the Lord. Just like in the Bible, like Hannah, dedicated Samuel to the Lord, took him to the temple, left him there with this older guy, and I'm so grateful my mom didn't do that. But I am dedicated to the Lord, right? And I just come to recognize the importance of that in my life, and just how cool it is to I serve the creator of the universe, and he's asked me to do something that he doesn't ask everybody to do, but I get to be his hands and feet to people. And so I'm just at this point where I'm I just really want to dive into that, and I think the best next step for me is to get into missions, maybe do some overseas stuff, and I just want to share with you a little bit about what I'm doing, where I'm going, and I don't know if you're familiar with YWAM Youth with a Mission. Yes. Great, that's awesome. Makes it a little bit easier. So I am going to do DTS, or Discipleship Training School. And I'm just going to pause here for a second. So much of this stuff is written out, so I don't have to memorize a lot of these things. So you can even it's okay to read this stuff to the person. They won't mind, But DTS is, I think the best time for me to do it right now is because I need to grow in my skills, to be able to share the Lord with people, and I need to know the Lord better. And this is a really good time to do that. And the Lord's just led me to YWAM Orlando as the best place for me to do DTS. There's a lot of different places I could, but in Orlando feels like the best place. Have you ever been to Orlando? No. Oh, it's great. It's hot, but it's great. So, at YWAM Orlando, they really have a focus on equipping young people to go to the nations, and they want to see, 2.2 billion people reached for Jesus who likely, never will hear about him. But they want to make sure that, every person hears the gospel. Every person has a scripture or a Bible in their own language, and everybody has the opportunity to be discipled. I really resonate with that. It just aligns with what God's called me to do. And it's in Orlando, about 30 minutes west of downtown. So I promise I'm not going to vacation there. And so what is DTS? It's a 5-month training intensive, and there's a campus phase and a campus phase and an outreach phase. And I'll be on the campus for about 11 weeks. And here you can kind of see some of the things that the themes that they are, have for the school. So, community living that supports and challenges students to follow Jesus. Practical classroom training that's modular. So that means just focusing on one topic per week. And then once this is done, once I've focused on really, investing in my relationship with the Lord, then I want to go and tell people about the Lord and actually do missions, right? And so, outreach is about 8 to 9 weeks. Usually it's overseas. And several details here I can share with you. But the point is, knowing the Lord and then making him known. Yeah. Do you have any questions for me?
Where do you go on outreach?
Where do I go on outreach? Well, they have a bunch of nations that they can go to. But what's the current outreach? Do we know where outreach teams are going? Sorry, I botched it. Okay, yeah. So right now I don't know, but I'll find out when I get there, and I'm just trust that the Lord will lead me to the right place at the right time. Yeah. Cool. Any other questions?
How can I help?
Oh, great. I'm so glad you asked. Here's a stock photo of me. Yeah, so DTS is a life-changing experience. I've read about it, talked to people at YWAM Orlando, and I just, this just seems like the Lord's leading me to just, take advantage of this unique opportunity and this time in my life. And I can't do this on my own. I'm glad you asked. So I need partners to help me get there. I need approximately $8,000 for my lecture phase and the fees and the outreach travel. And so I'm asking people, to partner with me on a level that could work for them. So you notice here I have this little graphic here, and if I fill all these bubbles up, I will reach my goal. And right now I have one filled, so I'm hoping that as I share with people, as I'm diligent with meeting with people, that I can fill all these up, in time for me to go in a few weeks. So I'd just be so honored, and there's no pressure, but maybe this number is high or low, but would you be willing to give me a special gift of $500 to help me do DTS?
Absolutely.
Yes, awesome. Thank you so much. Give me a hug. Yeah, so you want to do that in your own way. Yeah, thank you, Talon. All right. And so if someone says yes, then the link is right here of how they could pay, and they could give right then and there. That's the best situation. Sometimes people might want to write you a check or give to you a different way via Venmo, other things. Those are all okay. You just make sure you're prepared and ready for that. And then make sure before you leave your time with them, you just thank them. Thank them and thank them. Even if they say no, just say thank you. Yeah. All right, so we'll go through a couple details of what this actually, how to create this and why it's important, and then some meeting tips. And then we'll take more questions after that. So I just want to run through this briefly. And again, there's all the notes are available to you guys, but you can also in the live stream on YouTube, you can ask questions on there, and also connect with our admissions team too, and we can get you more details on more questions you have. But when you're creating adjusting the handout. You can adjust the testimony, make it yours. And there's tips on the Canva template of how to do that, some suggestions how to do that. And all the other things for DTS is it's basically there for what you need, and you can just share how you would share it. But I want to get to the part where you're asking clearly, and I just encourage you. That's the part you should really you should know how to do that. You should be ready to do that and give clearly, and ask to ask clearly, so that when people give, they understand what you're asking of them. And on the Canva template, there's a visual thing, so that really helps. Pointing to that, being very clear with your wording, and then it's like the scariest 2 seconds. Once you've asked, you just zip the lip. And I'm just scared out of my mind, and I want to be like, but it's okay if you can't or whatever, and you just, you talk over them. But I've never had anybody, the worst thing that people have told me is no. I've never had anybody be like, I can't believe you asked me for money. We'll never be friends again. I can't believe this. How could you do this to me in Starbucks? It's never happened like that, right? It's always just been like, no, I can't do it right now. Thanks so much for telling me about this. This is awesome, and I'm glad we got to hang out. So it's just so scary, and even still, sometimes I get scared when I do that ask, but you just zip the lip, and you wait. Cool. And then, let's see. Oh yeah, so your testimony, you want to keep that, fairly short, but, be effective in, being real, and, try to share in a way people are recognizing the emotions of like what God has done in your life and how he's, blessed you and grown you and just what he's done in your life. Before I get to this, just a few quick tips for meeting with people. You should meet for about 30 minutes, maybe less, depending on what what your friend has available. But don't draw it out. Don't have it be a big long thing. And then you also shouldn't talk the whole time. We gave you this illustration. I talked a lot, Talon didn't. But in a real face-to-face meeting, I'm asking people questions. I'm also trying to not go through it so fast that they can't understand what I'm talking about. And also, I do want to hear how they're doing, what's happening with them in their world. And passion is your secret ingredient. It overrides bad presentation. There's so many times I fumbled over my words, but just because I was obedient to prepare myself and be excited and just share it in a genuine way, people are like, oh, Sam's going to do something that's really cool. He's excited about it. He's passionate about it. I can see this is really affecting him. I want to be a part of what's happening. And you're going to buy them coffee or lunch. Don't be scared to do that. One thing that sometimes happens to me is I'll take somebody out and they insist on buying me coffee, and then that's how they help me get to DTS. They bought me a $6 coffee or a $7 coffee instead of the $500 special gift I would like to ask them about. And then have your giving link ready. So the link that we have in the Canva template, have it on your phone so you could message it to them. So they don't even have to type it out if they want to give right then and there. And you also, then they could have it for later too. And be early to a meeting. Don't ever be late. Don't do it. Just give yourself time and space to be somewhere that you need to be, because this is super important. And you're not going to have, for those of you who are have a few weeks left for fundraising DTS, it's going to feel man, I have to just cram people into my schedule because maybe you're working a job, you have other things going on, but it's just not worth it to cram so many things in where you're not going to be able to actually go and meet with that person. And sometimes meetings go longer. But just give yourself some space and time to do that. Yeah. And the last thing I want to leave with you is just a kingdom principle. So this is true, and this is regardless of people in missions or not in missions. But I just have learned, you do not have because you do not ask. That's James 4:2. And it's just something that the Lord has designed in us as human beings, that we need each other. And so, yes, I'm asking the Lord. He's the first person I'm asking for provision for DTS, to pay for the funds that, have the funds I need to do that and to go on outreach. But he also wants to involve other people in that, and other people in my life. And so it's just the biggest thing I've had to get over in my life is, I don't have what I need, God. He's I told you to go ask people, and you haven't been doing that. You haven't been faithful to do that well and prepare yourself to do that well. So it's a kingdom principle, and when we apply it, and we listen and obey the Lord's voice in applying that principle, we're just successful. We have a lot of success and can be fully funded. Yeah. Questions?
Yeah, just want to connect the dot there, right? It's if you don't share, even if the people say no, that's someone who's more aware of the need that's in the world, right? That there are people that actually haven't heard the gospel yet, right? So even if it's oh, they didn't say no, or they didn't give me what I expected, it's hey guys, there's one other person in the world now who is more aware of the need and how great it is and how much of an impact this generation can be, how you can be an impact in the world, right? So that's a thing that's okay, think further than just that moment there. Hey, this person is going to have a little bit more awareness of what's at hand in this day and age,
Throw something out quick.
Yes, yeah.
How would you feel if your very good friend was getting married and they didn't invite you to the wedding? You'd feel a little offended, wouldn't you? Some of my friends were a little offended that I never talked to them about my support need. They go, why didn't you tell me you needed it? And I was just unwilling to do that. And so there's so many things in life that come by invitation only. And so people want to be invited before they jump on.
So good. So our first question, it's going to be from our friends on YouTube on the live stream here. And it's dealing with face-to-face, kind of going through social media. And it says, besides face-to-face, do you have any tips if you also want to make a video to share on social media asking people to support?
I'm not very good at it, but I think just the things that I have done is I'm just genuine and I'm authentic and I'm myself. And anytime that I try to like spend a bunch of time, like I'm gonna make this thing look really cool and awesome and trendy, and it's like beyond what I just normally do, people like, did he like hire somebody to like make that post for him? Like, so I just don't always have great results with that. But when I'm just genuine in myself, those things can be in addition to meeting with people and connecting with people personally. It can help sometimes, like help my other circle of influence of people be like aware of what I'm doing. Yeah.
If you use social media or any other venue, I would recommend that it be about the vision of what you're doing, but not the ask. Because what happens, you know what an immunization does, right? It gives you a little bit of the disease so that your body can fight it off, and then you're immunized against it, so you don't get the thing. And that's what happens when you send out this kind of blast to everybody you know through social media. Then it feels like you've already asked everybody, but they don't feel personally asked, so they had no sense of needing to respond to you. But now it's really awkward for you to then go approach them because you've already been asked in a broad way. So if you're gifted and creating a social media post is easy for you and it's not going to suck up a bunch of your time, then I would limit it to casting the vision, defining what DTS is, why the DTS in Orlando is really the thing that God's calling you to, and why it's such a good opportunity, But then I would meet with people personally to have that face-to-face request. Yes. Does that make sense? It's just more effective.
That's so good. Our next question here is also from our friends on YouTube. And it says, what would you do in the times when there seems to be no support, yet you're still called to serve in ministry? It's a tough one.
I certainly pray, just, dear Jesus, help me. I mean, there have been many times in our journey where we've kind of been at the end of ourselves and we're crying out to the Lord and watch what He does. The other is I would get with some wise spiritual advisors, people, mature people in Christ that you have a relationship with, and just talk with them about it. And sometimes, as Sam alluded to this earlier, sometimes we don't have what we need because we've not asked. And sometimes we hit this point where we go, I've asked everybody I know. Well, probably that's not true. It feels true. I mean, I've said that. It feels like I don't know anybody else. But just getting somebody who's outside of us to interact with us and talk that through, you might be surprised at some of the ideas that come up that can actually break that log jam or that obstacle and help you move forward. So.
Yeah, and I think for me too, when I was raising money to come do DTS, it was really scary. Like I was 23, like I'd never done anything like this before. And your emotions, and I know some people don't think I have emotions, but emotions really overwhelm you. And so it is really good to, go. I went and talked to my pastor. Not everybody has a pastor relationship that they can do that with, but find somebody in your life that you can just help unpack and unload those emotions for you so it doesn't feel so crazy and wild. Like I felt like I was an insane person because I was doing something that's so countercultural to what we typically do in the United States. I just felt like this is just so overwhelming, and my emotions were just getting the best of me. But when I sat down and talked with a person I trusted, it's like, oh, okay, I can get through this. This is not so crazy. And my mind, have that person outside of you just help you get through the mind tricks. Yeah.
I was in a situation like that, and there was a guy that had been supporting Darla and I, and had a downturn in his business, and so he had to drop us. But we were still good friends, and he was a wise spiritual guy. So I went to him, and his name was Ed, and I said, Ed, do you mind if I chat with you about my need? We were talking about it, and I said, is there anybody that you could maybe refer me to? And he said, well, let me think about it. And we prayed together and thought about it. And then he gave me this list of 12 people to go talk to that I'd never met. And then he reached out to them to encourage them. But he said, I have trouble reaching out to them because I'm not supporting you currently, so I'm going to start supporting you again too. And then and a whole bunch of those 12 supported Darla and I because of his recommendation. Now, had I not been willing to humble myself and go, would you pray with me about what should we do? That wouldn't have come up. Yeah.
Let's see. That's so good. I know we got a couple more questions here. Okay, this one is for our friends who are in ministry, so like YWAM. And the question is, how do you make potential supporter contacts when you've been in YWAM for so long and everyone you meet is in YWAM?
Yeah, this is a great question. It's something I've really wrestled with for several years, and actually my wife kind of had to encourage me. It's like, you don't have to be like a super Christian all the time. Obviously I'm still like living a holy life. I'm still being obedient to the Lord, but I can do fun things. I can do interesting things, and I currently right now have people that support me because I went and I played Frisbee on Sunday afternoons, and I got to know people doing fun things. And it is amazing how the Lord has brought people who love missions across my path when I go out and do fun things. And when I go serve at church, or I go serve with some other thing that I'm aware of, and all this, I'm at a secular event, and there's this person who just loves missions, and we talk, and like, that's the Lord. So I have had to learn to like cut myself a break and not be so like, well, I gotta like learn how to talk to business guys and like be super professional and always like have a sermon ready to tell anybody that I ever meet, and and make sure I keep my evangelism statistics up to date. But I just like, go be yourself and actually go do something. Go put yourself in a place where you'll meet people and connect with people, and the Lord's going to bring them to you.
When I first started in YWAM, I came to Christ later. I was almost 20, and I was only a Christian a couple years. Then the church sent me to a YWAM DTS, and then the church exploded. It fell apart. So I didn't have, and they were disgruntled, the people were, so I didn't really have a bunch of Christian friends, and I only knew YWAMers, and I had that question's a real question. What do we do with that? But one of the things was just the people I did know that would support. I maybe had just a few people who would support me. Would go to them and say, "Do you have any friends that would be interested in missions that you could introduce me to and I could share?" And I didn't ask them, "Do you have any friends who will support me?" Because they don't know what their friends will do or not do. But they do know if their friends are interested in missions. And so I would go to those people, and over time, different ones started partnering with us. But I had to be intentional about cultivating new relationships, like Sam just described. Put myself in places where I'd meet people, but also going to the people I already do know, and they're already supportive, and they were willing to then introduce me to some of their friends, or have a coffee at their house or a dessert night at their house, and I would share the vision. I didn't stand up and ask for money. I just shared the vision of where God's at work, and asked them. The big ask that night was, can I keep you up to date on what I'm doing? And as I began to communicate with them regularly, then they started participating.
You have time for one more question here. So how do you communicate well with supporters through a vision change? So you're staying with the ministry, but you're doing something different than when you first started in ministry.
Some of that depends on what the something different is. So let's say you're working here at YWAM Orlando, you're on staff. Coming back to the why question earlier, you go, I don't know what my why is. Well, if you join YWAM Orlando, the why that we have as YWAM Orlando is now yours. Now, over time, you'll have some nuance or some specific things for you can add. That's not a problem, but you can own this if you want to. And so you might be working in the kitchen one quarter and working with DTS the next quarter. You're still about the same why. You're part of the team that is training a generation to go to the nations. But if you're literally going somewhere different, where you're leaving the Youth with the Mission Orlando and you're going to another ministry, then I try to bring my partners in, and even in the prayer process. Hey, I'm praying. My wife and I are praying. you know, we sense some changes coming. We're still committed to being involved in missions, but but I would have them include them some in that process, so it's not a surprise. It's not like they get whiplash because well, I thought you were doing this, now you're doing that. And by the way, if you change too much over time, people start wondering, are these guys really somebody I want to support? I'm not sure. But if you change, you just bring them involved, get them involved in your process a bit. Not too much detail, but enough that they're not surprised. Yeah.
Yeah, and over the years, I've not always done a good job of just staying up in regular contact with my partners. But if you do that, it's never really a surprise to anybody. And I also have learned to cut myself some grace, and I encourage people too. Like, I had a supporter for many years. Like, I was always very clear, I'm with Youth with a Mission, YWAM, in Orlando. And he thought the entire time I was part of Crew, which is a different missions organization. Still sent me money, still loved me, but he didn't really care what I was doing. He cared about me and cared about my family and what we were doing. So some of those details, sometimes I gotta be so clear and really great and casting vision of what's next and what the Lord's doing. And they're like, awesome. Are you still good and healthy and cool? You're our friend, we don't care, kind of thing.
Yeah, communicating regularly with your support is really key. And just keep it simple. Don't make it a big, elaborate production. Even if it's just a text or something, do something where they know there's a pulse. They're not just sending money into a black hole, but they actually have a person who, if you call it partnership, they want to hear from you or me because they're partners. But sometimes I think we make it too big of a project, and then it's overwhelming, and then we don't actually ever get it done. So they don't really care how slick it is, or how professional it is. Just they want to hear from you. Yeah.
Well, this kind of wraps up our time with the workshop. But something I've just been really encouraged by is I think it really broke down the simplicity of fundraising, right? And how I think we have to remind ourselves that God is the source. But when we're meeting with people, that's an actual person in front of us, right? And I'm inviting them into something that my heart's burning for, that I want to, that God, this is God's dream coming alive, through your actions, through your obedience, right? And that's the beauty of the invitation, right? So again, whether they say yes, whether they say no, man, you got to even, maybe it's a phone call, right? Or maybe it's that face-to-face conversation. You're looking someone in the eyes, someone's hearing your voice, and you're something that is so real, so tangible, right? And it's directly from God, right? And so it's so cool. I'm just so encouraged by just you guys sharing. Thank you guys so much. You guys have this wealth of wisdom and knowledge, and even Sam, that the practical thing that you put together. If you stuck around for the whole workshop, you get that. You're going to get access to that. And I just want to leave you guys with some final thoughts. Here. Like I said in the beginning, 2.2 billion people have yet to hear the name of Jesus. Actually, it said that they would live and die without hearing the name of Jesus. But here we are, Generation Z, Generation Alpha, one of the biggest generations in history. How will we be remembered? They talk about the World War II generation and how they were remembered as the hero generation, right? How is this generation, then the next generation, how are we going to be remembered? Not for our sake and honor and glory, but what would we be remembered as the ones who lived for the King, right? Would we be the ones that we talked about the nations, yes, but then we went to the nations, right? And finances wasn't the issue because we didn't look to people as our sources, but we knew God was our source, and we carried the vision, and we shared, and we brought an awareness to the things that were moving as God moved in the nations, moved in communities. And so, hey, whether you are a staff member, whether you're moving long-term over to the nations, or hey, you're coming to DTS here in the fall, or our secondary training school, I just want to encourage you guys, don't give up, right? Maybe this workshop time was to stir your faith for the greater things, to see that it's not impossible to be fully funded, that it's not impossible to be to do DTS or go to the nations. Don't let finances be the reason. Don't let finances be what you say, God, I can't do it. But would it be that from these tools and this time that we spent together, that you would actually be challenged, okay, God, you know what, I've given up. I've had a hard time, but hey, you know what, I'm going to try again. God, meet me in this area of faith, right? It says Jesus is the author of our faith. So let him author faith in your heart this afternoon, right? And we're so excited to see where God takes you guys. I'm so excited to see what nations get transformed. I'm so excited to see what communities will be reached and impacted, because some people watch this video, watch this live stream over again. Maybe you share it with your friends and realize, hey, finances isn't going to be the reason I don't go. Finances aren't going to be the reason that I'm silent. But actually, I would open my mouth. I would share, and people would be impacted. Even the people that you talk to. Imagine this. Imagine the people that you're sharing your vision with, sharing this need with, later on in the years come and do a DTS. Or actually go out into the nations. Or maybe they're like the eye doctors, right? And so they figure out a way to use their talents and their gifting to serve nations that don't have that strength in eye medicine, right? How cool would that be? Because one person was willing to share, hey, look, this is what my heart burns for. This is what I want to see. I want to see on earth as it is in heaven, right? So we thank you guys so much for being a part of this time. I really hope, man, that you go home, maybe you're at home right now, go share this with somebody, right? But hey, take these tools, take these things that we've shared, make it practical, right? Just do it. Like that Nike slogan, just do it, guys. You never know until you try. So I'm going to pray for us, and then we're going to conclude this time. Lord, I just thank you. I think for this afternoon, I just thank you for all of our friends who are here with us in person, in live stream, and we'll be rewatching this. Wow, words. Lord, we just thank you that it's not something that we are building on our own strength, but it's by partnering with you, hearing your voice, being obedient to what you're saying, God. And I just pray for the ones who feel defeated, who feel hopeless, and are wanting to give up. We just ask right now that hope would be stirred afresh in hearts this afternoon. That even that voice that says give up would be silenced in the name of Jesus. But your voice would be so clear and so prominent to take a step again, to step out in faith and to trust you, God. We're so excited to see what one person's yes in this obedience looks like from this time. So we just even pray for just a time of refreshing. Give people eyes to see the people around them, God. We love you, Lord, and we ask these things in your name, Jesus. Amen. Awesome. Thank you guys again for joining.